Hi, welcome to Talking Books and Stuff, the program that talks all about books and writing and stuff. Here's your host, Dennis Rimmer.
Hey there, it's Talking Books and Writing and Stuff. I'm Dennis. With me today, back again, is Jay Semko. Jay, we've talked to you a while ago, but since then I understand you have a new project. It's called a poetry book, The Poetry and Lyrics of Jay Semko. So Jay, let's start with you just telling us a little bit about the project.
Well, hey Dennis, it's great to hear from you again. Great to be talking here on this semi-snowy evening here, you know. I guess we're working our way into winter at the moment. So, but I've been. I guess the book. It was something that I'd been, mulling about over the last few years, and then I finally committed. Really just under a year ago to doing this. So I thought, well, I've got a lot of lyrics for a lot of different songs, and I started sorting through them, and I've also written a lot of just standalone poetry over the years that I never really even considered would become a song or have anything to do with songs or song lyrics or anything. And I just I started going through my piles of scrap paper and notebooks and things like that, and taking a look at it and go, deciding, do I have enough to do a book, to make a book out of this? And then lo and behold, I did. And in fact, I've got a lot more than even what what went into this book, So but in terms of the lyrics, it was interesting. It was a good starting point for me to sort of sort through and go, okay, what are the lyrics that actually could read well, like as a poem, as opposed to simply just the rhythmic sounds of the music, because so often songs are really, it's the melody carrying it, or it's a riff carrying it or something, and the lyrics can sometimes I wouldn't say incidental, but maybe don't take the primo spot that other elements might in a song or in a recording. And when I looked at it, I thought, well, a lot of my songs did come from poems. They were literally pieces of verse written down on various forms of paper. I mean, sometimes I guess I type stuff into the computer, but for the most stuff, for the most part, it's writing things down and physically putting pen to paper or pencil to paper of some sort. And yeah, it was just a case of sorting through these things, finding what I thought were good, what poems I thought would be maybe suitable for this particular book, and where that would be at. And it's and then the editing process begins. Once you go through this stuff, and it's sort of going, okay, is this really happening, or what? And that was a huge job, and I had to do a lot of that on my own, at least to begin with, and then it went to the publisher and the editor, and they did their stuff on it, and then it went back to me, and there was, a lot of back and forth over a long period of time. And it was also a case of deciding how to format the book, because poetry is different. It's such a free range style of of writing to a certain extent, and when I'm writing lyrics in a song, I mean, the music kind of sews that up. With poetry, I want it to be something that reads well, that literally looks like a piece of art that you can read, and you can, get a bunch of things out of it from a bunch of different perspectives. And so, yeah, it was, once I started on it, it was a lot of work, a lot of editing. I had to go back to a lot of the lyrics and adjust them and change them sometimes, and update them, and make it so that they would read better. Sometimes, like there's the old saying, Aretha Franklin could have sang the phone book and it would have sounded great, which is true. Somebody with a great voice like that can take a lot of things and just make them sound great. And I certainly don't compare myself or my singing to Aretha Franklin, but it's the same concept to a certain extent, where things can sound differently when you're singing them as opposed to reading them on the page. And we often get, sometimes lyrics get a bit of a gloss over because they're included, when you buy an album, and I used to love that. I mean, I still do. I love, putting on an album for the first time and kind of reading the lyrics as the song goes by. That's a cool thing. But when you don't have the music there and you're simply looking at it on the written page, you're going to have sometimes things that sounded good in a song don't translate as well when you read it. So I had to really be kind of aggressively tough on myself and go, okay, is this cutting it or is this not, or what do I do to make this better? And that's wherein lies the work. That's really where a lot of it kind of took place. And then I guess really when I looked at the whole thing in context, and I started with about 70 some poems. I narrowed it down to 49. That's what's in the book. And some of the ones that that didn't quite make it this time, they might be in the next book because I am planning a new one in the future. And but at this point, it was just a case of sorting through it, digging through it, finding the things that work. And conceptually, I mean, that was another big challenge, was finding, how do I make this work? There's song lyrics from 1995, and there's a poem that I wrote last year, and it doesn't read at all like a song. It's free form, sometimes abstract verse, and it's just a case of how do I sew this together? And in some ways, that was kind of nice to have, some of the advice of the publisher, of Jeannie Martinson from Wood Dragon Books. She had a good eye for that and a good ear for that. But at the same time, she was very, very cool in regards to, look, it's poetry, it's your thing, it's very personal to you, so you've got to do what you think is the right thing at the end of it all, and you've got to be happy with it, which is, she's referring to me, and that's really what it is, which in many ways is, in some ways, not that different from making a record. At the end of it all, when you release an album, nobody's going to look at it or go, oh, well, I don't like what the publisher did there. I don't like what the producer did there. I don't like, or if somebody's going to be critical of something, it's just them being critical of it. There's no rhyme or reason sometimes for this stuff. So, you just have to kind of do your best with it and put it all together. So what I had to do was sort through the ordering of songs was a bit of a challenge, and I realized when I looked at it and I looked at everything in context, and I had to take it out of the computer, and I had to physically get it all printed off, and I had sheets of paper, all over the room here, like everywhere, looking at the poems and going, well, what's going to work? Because I need to, for me, I'm a visual person, and I need to kind of see it in the context of what it's going to be like. And subject matter, I mean, there turned out to be more poems than I originally thought that had to do with, some of the darker things that I've had to deal with in my life, and that, and that includes my my journey through mental health challenges and addiction. And that was something that I decided, okay, I'm just going to be upfront with this and let her rip. And I'm really glad I did a bit of an extended introduction to the book, because I think when people read that, it may put a few of the poems in context that otherwise they may not have, immediately understood where this might be coming from. Having said that, sometimes some of it's just really skittery, scattery, abstract thoughts and stream of consciousness, which I love, and I love reading that, and I love writing it too. So, and in other cases, there are things that are more traditionally written as song lyrics. So I guess it's really a bit of a grab bag of different stuff going on in the book.
And we're talking with Jay Semko. Last time we talked to him here on Talking Books and Stuff was mainly about his time with the Northern Pikes. But this time around we're talking about the poetry and lyrics of Jay Semko from Wood Dragon Books. But what you're saying about editing, did you find it was not necessarily easier but more personal to print the stuff off of the computer and then have the pencil and paper in hand and actually word by word scribble something here and there or cross it off rather than cutting and pasting on a machine?
Yes, I found that for me that was a better way of doing it. And I guess I'm old school, because when I write songs, I still generally write them down with a pen and paper. Now, it's interesting. When I've co-written songs in Nashville with, professional songwriters that are working for a publishing company, and that's kind of all they do. They're writing songs, and I mean, their job is to come up with really good ideas, and most songwriters that are working for a publishing company they're writing a song or two or three a day. Like they're really, there's a high volume of output going on there. And I find with my stuff, I didn't really look at it like that. I just kind of thought, well, when it came down to looking at the concepts of the songs, I didn't really, I had no plans to get a hit song out of this, or to even come up with something that I thought would be a unique song or something. All of that I had to really put aside and eliminate it. And it was really not sometimes not even a conscious decision to do that. You just kind of, automatically kind of where you're going with this and what's going to happen with it. And I write a lot on instinct, and it took me a long time to actually write on instinct. And I guess I always did since I was a kid, but I never really took any of it that seriously. I just thought, oh, it's just me kind of scribbling, or my version of kind of random journaling or something. But really, at the end of it all, when I really took a look at things and took a look at the things I was writing, I realized that, boy, some of the poems are actual songs, or they have the potential to become songs. But what I had to do with the book was kind of toss that out and go, you know what? Nobody's listening to this with music. They're reading this on a page. And when it comes to computers and I guess copying and pasting and editing that way, yes, technically it's easier in some ways to use a computer for that. But for me, I like seeing, and this is where I come down. I'm a 70s old school guy when it comes to music, because I love hearing albums in the context of the entire album. To me, an album is like a book. Every song is like a chapter in that book. And I looked at every poem in this book just like that. I looked at them all as kind of, they're not joined up with anything else. They're not necessarily physically connected. And I needed to see them all visually laid out to sort of get the picture of what that would be like. And it was really a challenge to kind of separate myself from the music, especially with the lyrics. With the standalone poems, not so much. And in some ways, I can't say, I wouldn't say that it was easier. It was just different working on those as opposed to, the lyrics, especially if it was a lyric. And the lyrics are all from my solo records that I've done, and they're all things that I've written on my own. I did not include any co-writes or anything, or any stuff from the Northern Pikes, because those are all co-writes. With the Northern Pikes, so everything is a four-way write. And on my solo records, I have written a fair amount of songs that are co-writes with other people. And I really love doing it. I don't think I'll ever stop doing that. I enjoy that, getting inside somebody else's head and working with them on something like that. But when it came down to the book, I felt like it was a pretty personal kind of trip I was going to go on here. And I thought, well, it's just me, and that's what I'm going to stick to, are things that I've written personally that I feel a close personal relationship with.
So when you're putting the book together, the poetry and lyrics of Jay Semko, is there an actual way that you decide which poem follows which one, or do you just throw them all in there?
Well, that was the challenge, is finding what works well. And like I say, I love great albums and how they flow, and that's part of what makes a really nice record, is how one song flows into the next, and both lyrically and musical vibe and dynamics and tempo and all those things that are involved, that you learn partially through osmosis and partially through trial and error, and partially you can be educated in traditional methods for that too. But for me, most of it's trial and error. When it came down to the poems, I trusted my instinct on certain things, and I mean, I look at the first poem, Below the Equator, and I think it was one of the first ones that I really dug into, you know, when I was looking at the pile of papers and notebooks and things, and I thought, well, this seems like maybe it's a good opener. You know, just like finding the right song to open up a record, you know, to be the first song you hear when you flip on the album. And so, and I didn't really want to start with a song lyric, because I thought, well, I didn't want to necessarily put the pressure on the book to be just a book of lyrics, because it's a combo of the two things. At the end of it all, it's all poetry. And,
yes, one form or another.
You know,
yes.
When I came down to the title of it too, I mean, it was interesting because Jeannie from Wood Dragon, she said, well, you know, it'd be good if it did have your name in it, just because people kind of know you from your music, etc.
Right.
And might be a good introduction to them, the fact that you're, you know, putting stuff on the written page as opposed to recording it. And, you know, we threw a few ideas back and forth, and came up with the poetry and lyrics of Jay Semko, which is, you know, that's, I guess it does have my name in it, and it's completely honest, because that's exactly
that's right.
What it is. There's no beating around the bush there, you know.
Simplest is best.
Yes.
Excuse me. There, I had a cough. I don't have a cough switch here. So, the poetry and lyrics of Jay Semko. It's from Wood Dragon Books. Now, how did you meet up with them? How did that collaboration come about?
Well, that came through a mutual friend, and I was prepping. You know, I was prepping ideas, and I hadn't really committed to actually completing it yet. I was just sort of thinking to myself, well, yeah, I want to do this, and I've talked about it, and I've been procrastinating about it for a long time, but maybe I should do this. And I was preparing to send to publishers, you know, so a sampling of the poems and some of the manuscript, etc. And I was introduced to Jeannie Mortensen through a mutual friend. And we had a Zoom call. We had kind of a meeting online, and he said, well, you should really talk to Jeannie. She's really cool, and this might be a project she would be interested in. And so we had a good call, and I thought about it, and I mulled it over, I guess, for a couple of weeks or a few weeks. Then I thought, you know, I kind of like this, and I like the fact that it's an independent publisher, and the fact that I am able to retain a lot of artistic control. And, you know, I compared it in many ways. There are similarities to releasing records and the music biz that way in some ways, because, you know, there's pluses and minuses with going through a major international label. I mean, the Northern Pikes, our catalog, all of our music is on Universal Music, which is the biggest record label in the world, basically. And but myself, my solo material, I have been on a couple of labels through the years, on a few different labels, and then a few years ago, I was able to get all my catalog back, and I was very happy with that. Now, I didn't leave on bad terms with the previous record label I was on. They were really cool. It was a small indie label, and they were really cool, but I kind of wanted the control to be able to do what I wanted to do with my music and have 100% hands-on dealing with that. And I felt like with Wood Dragon, it was a good combination of both worlds. It really was. So, you know, I guess I could have shopped it around to, you know, great big publishers and that kind of thing. But, you know, I've talked to a bunch of people over the years, and I know that it's the same thing. There are pluses and minuses going that route. And the other thing I've realized, too, is I'm used to the adrenalized world of music and rock and roll, because you know, you psych up to get this record done, and then there's a big hype job on, like, okay, it's being released on such and such a date, and they're going to do a release show, and they're going to do a promo tour, and they're going to do this and that, and you can take some of those elements and add them into the writing world, but you don't really need to. And I look at the release of this, because it's not like, okay, here's the opening track, and it's gonna rock your socks off. No, it's poetry.
It's
you know,
poetry.
it's a different thing. So you just, and to me, poetry, to me, is something that you can read this over and over again and get multiple meanings out of it, and feel like there's a depth there. And it's the same with a good record, really, too. When you hear certain records, you can go, well, there's something really beyond a first listen here or a second listen. And I find that with this book, and I'm really hoping that people will find that when they read it, that they can get different things out of different poems over a period of time. And I've had a good response that way. I've had some good feedback from people who have been digging into the book and are finding that, finding a few different layers there, and that's encouraging to me because I go, well, yeah, I think maybe I'm on the right track with what I was doing writing wise. But in regards to the publisher, that's really, and she's been great. Jeannie's been really helpful. It's my first book. I'm a green author, green poet in that way.
Welcome to the club. Yep.
Yeah, so I'm just kind of I've written for most of my life, and in fact made a living out of it as a songwriter. But this is a little bit of a different ball game, and you have to kind of adapt accordingly. And I've loved it, Dennis. I've really enjoyed it. It's been a lot of work, and way more than I thought it would be. And in fact, I do compare getting this book prepared to working on an album, and the amount of time that it takes, and the amount of work you put into it, and the editing process. I mean, the creativity in some ways is kind of taken for granted. It's sort of like, we take for granted that you've got some good poetry here. Mm. So, but having said that, I mean, obviously, I had to send things into the publisher and all those kind of things. It was not like just anything goes kind of thing. You want to make sure that it's all happening. But I mean, and I knew that I did. I knew that I had some strong verses going on there because of my songwriting over the years. So, but yeah, I'm really happy with the way that relationship has worked out so far, and I think it's going to be good. We're looking at doing promotion for this book literally over the next 6 months to a year, and I'm hoping to. I mean, COVID has obviously changed a lot of things along the way, and we've all had to adapt accordingly. But I do have a book launch going on November 20th in Saskatoon, and at the Basement. And I'm looking at other ones. I know there's a book signing at the Cornwall Centre on December 18th in Regina, but I would like to do a formal kind of a launch thing. And by a launch, I mean that's me reading some poetry, telling some stories, singing some songs, just keeping it kind of loose and communicating with everybody and giving them a taste of the book and making a really interesting experience out of it for them. And so I'd like to do that literally on a national level. I want to go right across the country, and I'm just in the process of organizing, starting in the West here, and getting that together over the next number of months. And being a guy from Saskatchewan, I'm not afraid to drive in the winter. So if some of it happens in the winter driving, so be it,
Yeah. The Poetry and Lyrics of Jay Semko. Where is it available, the book?
Well, it's available in Saskatoon at McNally Robinson, in Regina at Penny University, and probably at other bookstores as well. It's available through actually any bookstore. You can look up the ISBN number. It's actually in the book, and it's available on any database, literally worldwide. If you go to any bookstore and look up the name of the book or my name as an author, you'll find it there. And I know a lot of people have been doing that, and I wish it was in every bookstore, but there's an awful lot of books in bookstores, and the competition is fierce, and it is a book of poetry. I am a brand new author. So certain places it will be in the bookstores. Otherwise, if you want to get it through a store, it's pretty simple. You just look it up in the database and order it through them, and they can get it in usually within a few days there. Also, people can buy it over Amazon. It's available as an ebook or through Kindle, and so it's out there really any way people want to find it. One thing I am working on right now is an ebook or an audiobook, and so that will include some music. And we're starting our sessions for that in the next couple of weeks. And I'm going to be doing the read myself, so there's going to be certainly a personal touch to the audio book, and there will be a little bit of music in there as well.
And this is all about the Poetry and Lyrics of Jay Semko. You have your own website, do you not?
Yes, I do. It's just www.jaysemko.com. jaysemko.com. That's the website.
I know that because I'm looking at it right now. But there you go.
Yeah.
You're also.
Yeah, I probably need to update something there. I'm always a little slow on the draw, but people know the book's out anyway, so.
There you have it. Jay Semko talking about his poetry book, and he's also working on another one, so perhaps look for him coming to a poetry reading, we'll say, or an appearance near you one day soon. And maybe next time, Jay, a year or so from now, when your next book is out, we'll talk again.
That sounds great. Thanks a lot, Dennis. Thanks for taking the time to talk to me today. I really appreciate that.
Thank you for visiting with us today. This is Talking Books and Stuff with Dennis Rimmer. Contact him at dennis@talkingbooks.tk. Thank you, and may all the good news be yours. Oh, and don't forget to check out his book, The Great Canadian Notebook, available across Canada and at amazon.ca.